Thank you. Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Madam Acting Deputy President. I too rise to talk about the Civil Law and Justice Legislation Amendment Bill. And as a Liberal, and I know all of us on this side of the chamber share and value the freedoms of thought, worship, speech and association, which are absolutely fundamental to our own democracy, and they are absolutely foundation principles of our party. But I have to say, so too is equality of opportunity. On this side of the chamber, we do believe, to all of us, as a core value, we believe in the equality of opportunity for all Australians. And listening to Senator Bernadi tonight, unfortunately I was in the chair, so it would have been highly inappropriate of me to have made any comment. But had I been able to, and now I can, I want to say to Senator Bernadi, shame on you. Shame on you for your comments this evening to come into this place in this day and age when we have over 400 women serving overseas, to come in and say what you did shames us all, and it is certainly not in line with our fundamental principle of equality of opportunity. For a senator and somebody who was a member of the Liberal Party to come in here and to argue for keeping entrenched discrimination in the Discrimination Act simply for the fact of someone's gender is a complete and utter disgrace. And I'd like to share with this place why I think it is just so appalling. He may have been somewhat flippant in his comments, but he could not have chosen a more insulting or a more demeaning topic, not only to all of our women who now serve in uniform, but to all of those young women who want to put their hand up. They have a look at the women who've now graduated as fighter pilots. They look at the women who are putting themselves forward to serve in combat roles. And Senator Bernadi, I'd say this to you, that yes, men and women are different, but hallelujah for that. But all of my career, and I'm sure every woman in this place, has had to demonstrate and fight to show that difference is not lesser. And the fact that as women we can do things just as well as any other man or anybody else or any other man, we do things just as well because we're women, Senator Bernadi, and not in spite of the fact that we are women. And again, you seem to think that service in our military is all about brute force. Well, I can tell you what, with the men and women that I have had the pleasure to serve with and the honour to serve with, and friends of mine who are still serving, and some of the young women who I've had the pleasure to meet in this job, they do not deserve your comments this evening. They are some of our brightest and most capable. And service for men and women is not just about, as you said, brute strength. It is about courage, it is about loyalty, it is about teamwork, it is about leadership. And all of those qualities are equally held by women as they are by men. And as Senator Bernadi said, it is not about breaking. It is not about breaking men or women. And for him to even come in here and say that and trot out some of the claptrap from unnamed sources degrades us all. And I just wanted to share some statistics with Senator Bernadi in particular, and anybody else who might want to trot out his, I was going to say, unconscious bias, but I think it was very deliberate bias. 51% of our population are women. 51% of our talent are women. And for the future of our defence forces and the security of our nation, we need more women to bring the depth and breadth of their talents into the Defence Force. Yes, we might do it a bit differently than men sometimes, but again, that is a good thing, Senator Bernadi. It is not something to be ridiculed in this chamber. So let's have a look at some of the facts. Last year, the ADF comprised only 17% of women. There is a lot more talent out there to be had, and I think the Defence Forces are doing it in a very considered and a very sensible way. Entry standards have not been reduced. It is still about the quality of a person's intellect and their character, their merit, and their ability to serve. Last year in combat roles, 95% of applicants were men, but 5% were women. And this year I understand it's 8% who are women. So far from what Senator Bernadi said is, women can't do it or they don't want to do it. Of course they do. And women will keep putting their hands up for combat roles, maybe never in exactly the same numbers as men, but we should be in here applauding and congratulating those who give it a go and for those who get there, and not ridiculing them. The Defence Force, and I know the Minister, has a very sound policy of not highlighting women in these roles for very good reasons. And I think Senator Bernadi tonight has shown us exactly why their privacy is protected from those people in the community, and sadly here in the Senate today, who would say to them, "You are not good enough because you are a woman." So I congratulate all of those women whose names, faces and identities we will probably never know. But it is for all of those women that this has to be repealed, and the words of Senator Bernadi cannot go unanswered. Lieutenant General Angus Campbell, the Chief of Army, was quoted as saying, "I want to see more women, more culturally and linguistically diverse and more Indigenous Australians serving in our army." And it's not for any quota or for any politically correct reason that Senator Bernadi seemed to suggest. He said it's because he wants the best and most talented Australians to serve their nation in their army. And I couldn't agree more with the Chief of Army. And I also agreed with the previous Chief of Army, who said, David Morrison, who said the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. And today in the Senate, I heard words and a standard that I could not possibly walk past or ignore in this place. Too many women for too long in the military and in the army have had to put up with not just people expressing opinions like that in the workplace, maybe in their families, but also for politicians. And as I said, it may have been somewhat flippant, but it should not have been said. And I just hope that his comments tonight do not go much further than this, because it is just wrong. So moving on from this topic, and I hope, Senator Bernadi, you have heard my comments here tonight, and I'll be happy to have a talk to you about them afterwards. But as I said, we on this side of the chamber, like those opposite, do believe in a just and humane society. We all share those values in this place. The importance of family and the respect for the rule of law is paramount and must always be maintained. And this omnibus bill that is before the Senate today does just that. As we've heard from many of our colleagues, expanding on the brilliance of our archives and the way we do our archival activities and the many other things that this bill changes, they are all actually very important. And this bill is designed across a number of bills to protect the rule of law and ensure that justice is always maintained. And through this bill, I do commend the government, and I also commend those opposite for their comments and their contributions to this bill this evening, because I think it does make the right decisions and it does take the right steps to ensure that our Commonwealth legislation is coherent, readable and accessible to the widest possible audience, so that it can be consistently applied and easily understood. And I think, as all of us in this chamber know, that can be quite often very challenging to actually read and see consistency across legislation, and certainly it is not always easily understood. So this omnibus bill will improve the operation and clarity of our civil justice legislation by modifying and simplifying and clarifying existing provisions, and wonderfully, I think, to repeal redundant provisions to strengthen and ensure our democracy has all the necessary and appropriate safeguards and legislative instruments to ensure that our country remain equitable and just for all. And as I've said, nothing more so than the move out of the Sex Discrimination Act to remove the positive discrimination against women simply for the fact that they are women. So I do applaud the government and I applaud those opposite for supporting this. So the bill does consist of 10 schedules with amendments to 10 separate pieces of Commonwealth legislation that will ensure we have a strong, just and equitable justice system and a legal framework in this country. And I note Senator McDonald's comments earlier on this evening, talking about the Senate Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee inquiry into this omnibus bill and its report that it tabled last year. Now, it was pleasing to see that there was support for the bill and that the government has taken up the amendments as recommended by the committee. So some of the impacts, in addition to the one that I've been so critical of Senator Bernadi tonight, include amendments to the Acts Interpretation Act 1901 and Legislation Act 2003. This bill will amend the Acts Interpretation Act 1901 and the Legislation Act 2003 to clarify the validity of ministerial actions and the operation of provisions about the compilations prepared for the Federal Register of Legislation. Probably most people listening to this at this time of night might find it not exactly very exciting, but again, in this place, it is important. And I won't go through the Archives Act amendments because I think Senator Moore has very well gone through and explained it with her passion for archival activities of this chamber. But I do support the amendments to the Bankruptcy Act 1996 to clarify that the Family Court of Australia has bankruptcy jurisdiction when a trustee applies to have a financial agreement set aside under the Family Law Act. Again, something not significant to all Australians, but for those going through that court and being impacted by this decision, it is a good thing for them. This bill will update the Evidence Act such that the presumption in relation to when postal articles sent by prepaid post are received are in accordance with changes to the Australia Post delivery times. Again, not necessarily something that those listening would get too excited about, but for those who still do use and rely on Australia Post, then you will know that this is actually an important amendment. And as others in this chamber tonight, including Senator Griff, have so eloquently talked about, the Family Law Act amendments. This bill does, and I think we all in here support, the fact that it strengthens Australia's response to international parental child abduction. Many of us have had family members, and I've certainly got a family member who has been impacted, has been devastated by having a child abducted. And so any powers, including this one, that can actually assist the process for those parents of an abducted child is to be applauded. And what this one does is to clarify the range of persons who may discharge the powers of registry managers in the family court and approve the consistency in the application of provisions for de facto married couples. In addition, this bill will update the arrest, entry and search powers under the Act and add additional safeguards for the exercise of those powers. Again, many people listening at this time of night will not get too excited about that. But as Senator Griff, I think, so well captured, for those who are going through this nightmare, having increased powers and protections and processes is of comfort. And I note that this bill will also make some minor technical amendments to the Family Law Act to clarify definitions and move redundant conditions. So, Madam Acting Deputy President, I just want to conclude where I started, and I could not speak any more strongly in my support for the repeal of Section 43 of the Sex Discrimination Act. It is not only an anachronism, it is a complete disgrace that it is still there in this day and age. Whatever profession, whatever pursuit any young Australian man or woman wants to have in this life, it is not up for us or anybody else in society to tell them what they cannot do simply because they were born a girl. As I said to start, women do it just as well as men. We might do it differently, but quite often, and I see here in this place time after time on all sides of this chamber, women in this place do an amazing job, not because or in spite of the fact that they're women. Women in this place do an amazing job because they are women. because they have a different voice, they have a different perspective on life, and certainly diversity in this chamber is to be celebrated as it is in the military. So as I said, shame on you, Senator Bernadi. You might not have meant what you said, but the words you used tonight and what you said tonight has a serious impact, and I would hope you come in and address those comments. Thank you.
Senator Seselja.
Thank you. I move the debate be now adjourned.
The question is that the debate be now adjourned. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Senator.
Thank you. I move that resumption of the debate be in order of the day for the next day of sitting.
Clerk. The question is? Of the debate be in order of the day. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Government Business Orders of the Day number 4, Export Control Bill 2017, second reading debate.
Senator Brown.
Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy President.